in the bag, ideas to flow. Steph and Joe are on the go, go, go. Sharing what we know, from the classroom to the show. It's Steph and Joe on the go. Innovation, education, moving fast with dedication. Come along, let's start the flow. It's Steph and Joe on the go.
Good morning, everyone. Man, Joe, have we been on the go or what?
Oh my goodness, Steph, it has been a minute. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. Back to school season has killed me, I would say, right? Like I felt like we were like, oh, I can't meet today. I can't do this or whatever, just because of the back to school craziness. So it's good to hear your voice.
Yeah, you as well. It has been absolutely insane. I feel like I'm living that Green Day song where it says, "Wake me up when September ends," because this month has just been so crazy. Good crazy, because a lot of the crazy stuff I brought upon myself, but it's just been such a busy month. So I'm glad we can finally get together and record an episode.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to especially talk about today's topic that we're going to talk about that we wanted to talk about, I feel like weeks ago, but I think it's so relevant to today.
Yes, and I want to preface this with AI training is absolutely fundamental. Okay, and if we have any administrators listening, if we have anybody in the government listening, please, we need to make sure we provide funds to our school districts to provide excellent AI training, because our teachers need to be prepared for when AI is brought into their classroom. They need to be able to be trained on what it is, ethically use it, and what prompt engineering is. Otherwise, how are you going to train your kids? And I say this because I've been working with a school district down in kind of Southern California-ish called Orcutt Union School District. Amazing school district. They're one of their superintendents, Joe Dana, is an amazing individual. But I have to say their director of IT, director of ed tech, Leslie Wagenseller, had a great idea. She was like, Joe, we don't have the funds for subs, but we still want our teachers to be trained. What if we did a rotation model where teachers and students are trained at the same time? I go, that is interesting, because we always train teachers hoping it trickles down to the students. But what about if we did them both at the same time? That would be an interesting kind of experiment. And we did it, and it went fantastic. We had them go through 3 different sessions. My session was basically AI 101 and how to use things properly and ethically in class. We had another session on digital media literacy in the age of AI. And then we had another one on ensuring critical thinking. You don't always have to use AI, by Dr. Saba. And it was just fantastic. The kids loved it. The teachers loved it. And I told Leslie, I think this is a great template that other school districts can use. So if you're listening out there and you're wondering, how are we going to fund AI PD for our teachers? Think about what Leslie did. Think about if you can do those rotation models with teachers and students, because it was fantastic. Steph, I want to ask you, have you ever heard of that? Because I've never seen that type of PD done before.
I have not. I mean, I've done a version of that where like modeling an instructional strategy, right, with teachers as a coaching cycle, but not something that's been done by every single teacher. Because it sounds like it was every single teacher, which is amazing, right? Like being able to kind of say, hey, we're all going to get trained, but so are your students. And I think too, sometimes I think AI is very overwhelming for people at the start. But if you think of teaching, your audience is like, maybe a 5th grade student, that teacher might better understand the concept, because I was watching some of the Day of AI work that was done, and I really liked how they kind of explained it more at that 2nd grade level. And I was like, oh, that's kind of how it works in the background, rather than like, what are they talking about, right? Like all that higher vocabulary and the foundation maybe isn't there. But when you're explaining it to kids, you can sometimes explain, hey, do you guys already use AI in your life, right? And then they can provide some examples of ways that AI is already being used.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it was interesting because, these were high school kids, and high school kids judge you instantly, which is funny. And so you have to get them hooked right off the bat. And same thing with our teachers, right? Because I saw some, maybe like not as interested. But as we were talking, I said right off the bat, I was like, teachers, I really want you to focus, because you're going to be able to hear me say things that when you go back to class, you're going to be able to tell your kids, you see, that's why I don't want you using it that way. And you kind of saw the kids roll their eyes a little bit. And I go, and kids, students, you're going to hear me say things. And you can go back to the classroom and say, teachers, I told you we can use it that way. And they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, so this is for both of you. And I was like, the whole point of this, though, is for you to go back to your classrooms, your homerooms, and spark that conversation, right? Because if we just blanket ban these things, students, we're not reaching you in the moment you need to be reached. So we have to discuss it. I go, but also students, we can't just let you use it any way that you want, because we have to talk about ethics and proper use. And so I go, that's how we're going to start this conversation. And they were all fantastic. They listened, they participated. It was a very interactive session, and it was great. So I want to see other school districts kind of replicate this model, especially if the thing holding them back from doing AIPD is funding, because no funding was needed, right? Other than bringing a couple speakers out.
Yeah. And I wonder too, like, if we could just talk about the logistics a little bit more, because it all happened during the school day, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And then the speakers, they went to a classroom. Like, did every teacher get an hour, 2 hours? How many time? Like, how much time was devoted per classroom?
Yeah, so there was 3 different cohorts, I would say, of rotations, and each cohort had a smattering of freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and it was put on in 3 different locations. And so there was one speaker in the gym. There was another speaker in the multi-purpose room, which is like the what is that? The cafeteria with the stage and things like that. And then there was another one done in their very big library media center. And so we had 80 minutes for each session, and we would do our thing. We wanted it to be very interactive, so the kids had their Chromebooks and they were carrying them around. And after the 80 minutes, thanked them for their time. They had student volunteers that they followed to the next session. And it was very well organized. And so from 8:30 till 12:55, we did these 3 rotations, these 3 sessions. And then we had kind of a meet and greet. So all the speakers were at the gym, and anybody that wanted to come in and talk to the speakers and ask any follow-up questions, lunch was provided, and we had a Q&A. And we did that. And then by 2 o'clock, it was over. And we were like, that actually went really good. So maybe next episode I can let you know a little bit more, because we did send out a feedback form to students and teachers to get their thoughts. But I'm hoping that this is a model that can actually be utilized.
Yeah, and what I like too about it is, it was meaningful. It wasn't just like, oh my gosh, this is another. I mean, maybe some teachers thought it was another thing, but hopefully after the fact, they were like, oh, this actually was helpful. It wasn't like just something that I had to go sit down, learn about. Like, you were able to do, students and teachers at the same time. So yeah, I'm really excited to hear how this goes. But I also know that you shared 2 research studies with me. Do you want to kind of summarize what that research was?
Yeah, so 2 studies had come out over the summer, one in June and one in August. So the first one was done by a group of MIT researchers. And what they found out was that when you rely too much on AI, right? When it's work you could do on your own, or you're using AI more than just as a guide on the side, as a co-pilot, when you're using it to do more of your work, and the work isn't really considered yours anymore, they found that you actually have metacognitive laziness occurring. And so people are less likely to go off and do work they can normally do on their own. They more reach to the AI to try to get that work done. And they become not as good of workers anymore. They kind of retrograde into more of a button pusher than a critical thinker, right? So when you over rely on AI, you are becoming lazier, right? And it's very simple, right? Think about your muscles. right? If you stop working out, your muscles go away, right? If you lay in bed too long, your muscles atrophy and it's harder to walk. It happens. Retrograde happens in your muscles. Same thing happens in your brain. You don't use it, it regresses. And so that's the first one from MIT. And then the second one from Microsoft was when they actually were looking at in the business sector, in the work sector of AI being used. And they found that when people believe in AI too much, meaning that it's infallible, there's a huge loss of the critical thinking factor in the workplace. And so when you're not looking at the output, when you believe the output is perfect and you're not critically analyzing it, you lose your critical thinking aspect at the workplace. And they find that to be detrimental to businesses. And so they're saying you have to be able to analyze the output for accuracy, remove what is wrong. And so you have to have an extreme expertise in what you are doing. And they found that the people that are harmed most by this are those new to a profession, because they've never understood how to do the job in the first place, and they never will. And so I push that back to incoming teachers, right? If we don't train incoming teachers and they start relying too much on AI, they're never going to become the best teacher they can be, in my opinion, because they're relying too heavily on the AI, right? So you're going to lose that critical thinking factor for your specific profession. And because of those two studies, I have heard chatter, people going, well, that's why we don't like AI. That's why we don't like AI. Well, there was one more study done that actually said when AI is used properly, meaning you are critically analyzing the outputs, you are using your critical thinking skills to craft a prompt, you are analyzing everything on your own, you are bringing your own work to the table, and AI is there to amend it for a particular audience. When you do the most of the heavy lifting, AI in education actually increases educational aptitude. It actually has a significant greater presence of learning than without AI. So that's the point that I wanted to make is, yes, using AI too much, relying on AI too much, believing AI too much is going to harm teaching and learning. But here's the thing, if we use it properly, if we train our teachers on its ethics, if we train our teachers on the proper technique of prompting, if we remind our teachers and students the first output is the worst output, and you have to critically analyze by clarifying, verifying, and modifying your prompt multiple times, then it actually becomes a successful tool in teaching and learning. But the unfortunate thing is, the only way you learn how to do it properly is through proper training, because we're not getting proper training off TikTok. We're not getting proper training off of Instagram. We're only getting proper training by those of us who are actively learning how AI can better education. And we need to make sure our teachers are given the time and place. And if it's outside of work hours, the funding in order to have these take place. And my hope is that more and more grants will be put out in the coming months to provide school districts funding for proper AI education for both teachers and students. So I am still a huge proponent of AI, but only when it's used ethically and properly. So I would love to hear your thoughts on those studies and kind of my take on the results.
Yeah, I think too with those studies, that's with any instructional strategy or resource. It's all about how you implement it. So, right, if I use it as like a tool and I'm not looking at what outcomes came and I just send the email as is and I don't edit it or rewrite it, that's a poor outcome. And so again, it goes back to how we're using it. So, group work is a great strategy. There's a lot of different strategies like reflection, right? But if we're not implementing it with the right standard operating procedures in place for group work, if we're not having deep conversations about the content, then that strategy is not good either, right? And so it all comes back to how it's being used in context. And I think sometimes I hear teachers go, well, AI, is really bad. Like I read this study and, it's like, do you know the context of how it was being used? do you know how the teacher was doing it? Because there was an activity that I did with a group of students where we called it Beat the Computer. And our students came into School AI, they uploaded their writing and activities into School AI, and they got feedback. Most of those students on the pretest scored 2, 3, and 4. They took the feedback from AI. They then worked. I was able to create small groups using that data and organizing it into smaller groups. I was also able to have that data help me know what next steps, like which students needed help with transition words, which students needed help with this, which students needed help with that, which I could have done myself, but it just would have taken a lot longer for me to do that. And then I was able to kind of look at, okay, did this happen? But I also think it's interesting that you said the new teachers on the block, they don't have what I've had to do for hours, right? Like I've had to sit there and look at spreadsheets and writing and samples and for hours and hours trying to decide what next steps my students need. And so I thought that was kind of interesting that you brought in newer teachers might struggle with that because they never had to go through the process of what maybe AI is replacing for that time. And so then I can double check, create those small groups, create those resources with AI's help. And then my students went back in and they did that same writing activity with their revisions, with all of the knowledge that we talked about. And my students were scoring 8s, 9s, and 10s on that final writing piece. And this was out of 10. And so again, I think it saved me a lot of time. It built a lot of metacognition and reflection within my students to build that excitement. But it was how it was implemented. If I would have just said, read that feedback, make corrections, I don't know how great it would have been. If I didn't upload my rubric into my prompt, I don't know how well it would have scored those students. If I didn't know what I needed to do for reteaching steps alongside AI, I don't know if I would have been able to do that lesson and get the same results that I did, right? And so the human is so important in implementing and using AI.
No, I mean, that's absolutely 100% correct, right? It has to be a co-process, right? And in my vision of AI, proper AI use, the teacher brings something they've already done to the table. And, we've already talked about this. I always say, that if you're going to use AI, you have to go through a thought process first. You can't just use it as a knee-jerk reaction. You can't just use it to save you time. I am a huge opponent against using AI for the primary reason of saving time, right? Saving time should be a byproduct of proper AI use. It should not be your reason to using AI. And so we always use our AI cubed model of what is your why? Why did you decide to use AI in the first place, right? And I always tell teachers this. Imagine I'm not very good at writing strong lesson plans. So my why is I want to upload my lesson plan to see if AI can give me recommendations to make it stronger. Okay, there's your why. But you're bringing in work you have already done. You just want to make it stronger. And then you have to say, okay, what specifically in your lesson plan do you feel you need the most work done on, right? You don't want it to look over the entire lesson plan. Maybe there's a particular focus. Maybe it's the hands-on activities. Maybe it's the conclusion, right? What is the what in your use of AI? And then finally, the last thing is, how are you going to ask it? You need to be able to articulate exactly what you want the AI to help you with, your what. You have to articulate your what, right? And we call that AI cubed. And whenever I show it to teachers, they're like, but that takes forever. I go, you see, AI is not here to save you time. It's to make your work better. And sometimes to make your work better, actually in most cases to make your work better, it's going to take more time. But as you learn how to do this routine more and more and faster, eventually you will be saving time as a byproduct of being taught the technique and learned how to use it. And then boom, now it's going to save you time, but that's not your why. And I think that's incredibly important for our newcoming teachers to understand, because I think using a calculator is great, but I'm never going to use a calculator if I don't understand the buttons I'm pushing. I need to know the why behind me pushing these buttons and symbols so I can analyze the output to make sure it's accurate, right? That's what we have to do with AI. Too many times we're starting with the calculator and have no idea what buttons we're pushing. And I think that's going to be a detriment to education and a detriment to student learning if we allow that pathway to go down.
Yeah, and so I think too, like, what suggestions do you have for a teacher, maybe a new teacher, and they're like, okay, what do I do? Where do I get professional learning if their district's not providing it? Do you have any good resources or thoughts on where to start?
Well, I can always give a shameless plug. You can always go to sonsoftechnology.com. It just links to my YouTube channel. And I do have about 12 hours of PD on proper use and ethics and routines. And I normally use a lot of these strategies in my face-to-face hands-on workshops. But if you're more of an asynchronous learner who just wants to sit back and listen, you can definitely do that. I also have found some really great AI help groups on Facebook. I'm not a big social media person anymore, but I do find Facebook groups, at least headed by educators, can be very beneficial. So definitely search out some of those Facebook groups. But I think one of the main things is, find a friend. Like Steph, me and you talk about this stuff all the time, not just on the podcast. And I get to run ideas by you and you're like, that's crazy. How about you do it this way? I'm like, I never would have thought of that. So I think personal connection and talking things out with other educators is one of the best ways to learn about AI use. And then of course, read as many articles and not just education based, but how is AI being used in the workforce? How is AI transforming this and that? The more you understand how AI is transforming the world, it reminds us, if we're here to teach kids how to be great adults in the workplace, we got to teach them the tools that are being used in the workplace. And right now, AI is the one tool that people absolutely need to know how to use in basically all jobs happening right now.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think for me, it's been having that friend. So I think knowing how you learn best can really help. I learned through like reflection and conversation. So I'm like, okay, Joe, I've got this idea. Is this out of the line? Or how do I take a 60-minute session if you're an instructional coach, right? I only have 60 minutes. What should I really focus on in those 60 minutes, right? And I think that's just helped me grow my knowledge and understanding of how to support educators with AI. But I think that can also be a really great way to support.
Yeah, and if you just want something quick at a glance, I have made some posters that our teachers in our district have printed up and put up in their classrooms as reminders. And so if you just go to bit.ly/AI_posters, all lowercase, you can have access to all the posters I've made for my school district, which reminds us about proper prompting, about the prompt refinement cycle, about AI cubed, all these things kind of alluded to on today's podcast. All those posters are up there. And Steph, I just made, because I've been really excited about this, I just made a leveling poster, right? Have you heard of AI leveling for assignments?
I might have, but tell us more.
Okay, so AI leveling for assignments is something that a site would create so that it doesn't matter if you're in a science class, an English class, a math class, the AI levels are the same in every class. So imagine your teacher says this assignment is AI level 0. That means in any class you're in, no AI whatsoever. I want to see your work and your work only. This is an AI level 0 assignment. So the kids don't have to ask, what does that mean? It's the same in every class. Or this is an AI level 1, meaning you may use AI for research, right? And for a tutor, but that is it. Or AI level 2, you can use it to refine your work, right? Like, so every level has a kind of an increase in AI use. But then we have at the very bottom, these things are maintained in every level, and it's critical thinking. Your work must come first. Like all these reminders at the bottom of it doesn't matter what level you're working on. These are the things you must maintain throughout. And so I made a kind of a beta test of it, and I shared it with my team, and they're like, oh, this is great. I go, don't say it's great. It's a first draft. We need to tear it apart. We need to rip it apart. We need to say all of its flaws and then build it back up. But it's a good start. So I would love to hear out there, listeners, if you have, or your state or your district has an idea for AI leveling, we'd love to hear it, because I think this is a great way to ensure consistency across a campus and even across a district, if everybody can agree on these leveling titles. So I'm really excited, because I think this is something our teachers have been asking for, and I think we're at the very forefront of providing it to them.
Yeah, okay, so I have heard of AI leveling. I did something a little bit different though. I didn't do like level 1, level 2. I took kind of part of the learning. And so like, can they use AI for research, brainstorming? So I kind of like listed out different pieces of learning, and then the teachers can go into a Google slide and they're able to highlight red, green, based on if they can or can't use it for that part of an activity. But I really like your idea, because then it's consistent across, right, classroom to classroom. And I don't think students would get as confused, like, okay, this is a level 0, no AI. This is a level 1, okay, maybe some AI. But again, I think it can just be helpful for students to know those expectations ahead of time. And I also think there was a school in California where they have an app where it tells you if the student used AI or not. Like, the kids click on the app or something, and then they click some boxes. So there's an app available too. I can't remember the name of it, but I do know it was like a school in California that started to implement, and I think they did it.
Yeah, I think I heard about that too. I think it was actually a Chrome extension.
Yes.
And when you're on an assignment, you can click the level and it would paste it on your Google Doc. This is a level this, and it kind of gave a reminder. And so thanks for that reminder, because now I want to double check, because I heard about it, but I did not investigate it. So that could be a cool one as well.
I know Kim Bogey's school district down in Southern California that created that.
Oh yeah, so that's near the Lake Elsinore, Cupertino area. I'll definitely take a look. I'll see, and I think it was maybe a county office maybe that made it. So I definitely want to dive deeper and take a look at that.
Yeah, so that's another way that you could use, right? So just again, tell students what are the expectations, because Brene Brown, she says, clear is kind. And I think sometimes we think, oh, if I just like leave it a little bit open, or I don't tell them everything, I'm being really kind. But I think when we have those guardrails and when we tell people our expectations, we're actually being really kind. When we have clear directions, clear expectations, people need that. People need structure. People need routine. And so being clear, having that, sharing that with your students, you're actually being more kind than you are with not telling them at all.
No, I agree. That's a very cool statement. I want to make sure I remember that. Clear is kind, because ambiguity leads to chaos. So yes. I think that's a very, very good statement.
Awesome. So we want to know, what are you doing in your classroom, either with the research, professional learning, or even setting those guide rails and guidelines for when students can't use AI. And I know everybody's been on the go, so hopefully October slows down just a little bit, right? We're still doing meaningful work, but hopefully we're able to just kind of breathe a little bit more, and hopefully me and Joe can get on that schedule again.
Yes, we hope we can be with you every other week. But life of a teacher is go, go, go. Not just for Steph and Joe, but everybody seems to be on the go. So thanks, everybody. We appreciate it.